The North Pacific swells with history, its waters layered not just with currents, but with memory. Below the surface, where light fractures and drifts through a cathedral of blue, a pod of orcas glides in tight formation. Their bodies move with a kind of familial synchrony, an inherited rhythm, not unlike the ancient songs of whales, but quieter, more precise. This isn't just a hunting party, it's a living library in motion. At the center swims the matriarch, older than many of the sea's recent upheavals, a matron whose experience spans decades of shifting prey, warming waters, and seasonal flux. Her mind is not merely sharp, it is archival. Among orcas, knowledge doesn't trickle, it flows. Matrilineal transmission forms the backbone of orca societies. These are not loosely organized schools of fish, nor instinct-driven shark packs. These pods are bound by blood and built on memory. Scientific tracking has revealed that older females, particularly post-reproductive ones, are vital to their pod's survival. In times of scarcity, it's these elders who lead hunting dives with uncanny precision. Not guessing, not sniffing out prey, they remember. Decades-old salmon routes, once carved into their consciousness through experience, are recalled and followed even when climate shifts render those paths nearly invisible to younger whales. In a world of vanishing cues, memory becomes a map. This behavior was once thought impossible in non-human animals. The idea that a species could culturally encode migratory strategies across generations. Yet in resident pods off British Columbia and Alaska, researchers have documented orca families choosing paths not because they're the most direct, but because they historically led to abundance. When storms reroute surface prey or new human activity clogs traditional grounds, these whales don't merely adapt, they consult the past. This memory is not written in DNA, but in neural circuits shaped by decades of experience and passed down behaviorally, orally, even socially, through what we might cautiously call mentorship. And this cultural transmission isn't restricted to navigation. In the chilly coastal waters of Patagonia, orcas have developed a unique and haunting tactic: intentional stranding. At high tide, they launch their bodies onto the beach in a high-risk maneuver to seize young seals resting at the surf's edge. Most marine predators would never risk such an act. For the untrained, it's a likely death sentence. Stranding means suffocation, injury, or being left behind. But in these specific pods, calves are brought to the shallows by older females and shown how to do it properly. The young practice by lunging into the shallows without striking. It's a tradition passed through repetition and correction. It is taught, not inherited. Further afield, off the Australian coast, another orca pod showcases a more subtle cultural trait: sponge carrying. Observed in a few individual orcas and repeatedly among specific family groups, this behavior involves balancing a sponge-like object on their heads while swimming near the seafloor. The purpose? Still debated, but some believe it's to protect their heads while foraging through sharp coral and rock for bottom-dwelling prey. What's crucial is not the object itself, but the transmission of this tactic. Calves that learn from their mothers and aunts perform it more reliably than those that don't. These are not one-off tricks. They are inherited practices embedded in group identity. Even vocalizations bear the fingerprints of lineage. Orcas speak in dialects, patterns of clicks, whistles, and pulsed calls unique to each pod. Young calves are known to practice the specific cadence of their matriline's accent, similar to how human infants babble before mastering speech. These dialects do more than identify individuals. They convey familial bonds, coordinate hunts, and may even express emotion or intent. In essence, each pod has its own language, its own traditions, and its own set of survival instructions passed down like oral scripture. What emerges from this matrix of memory is a picture of intelligence that is less about solitary brilliance and more about social cognition. Orcas don't simply survive by being clever. They survive by learning together, remembering together, and evolving behaviorally as a unit. Unlike the rigid, instinctual life cycles of many marine animals, orcas are adaptable because they are cultural. Their intelligence thrives not just in their brains, but in their relationships. This system becomes most evident in times of ecological upheaval. As ocean temperatures rise and fish stocks shift, transient orca pods, those that hunt marine mammals instead of fish, have shown remarkable dietary flexibility, expanding their prey base to include stingrays, seabirds, and even sharks. But it's the social pods, particularly those led by older females, that exhibit the most consistent success across decades. Their advantage isn't necessarily better senses or sharper teeth, it's inherited strategy. In survival terms, memory is a weapon. And yet this brilliance has its fragility. Cultural knowledge can be lost faster than it can evolve. When elder females die without passing on their knowledge, pods have been observed to make more erratic migratory choices, hunt less effectively, and decline in calf survival. The death of a matriarch isn't just a biological loss, it's the burning of a library. In an age where oceanic ecosystems are shifting faster than many species can adapt, orcas offer a striking example of what resilience can look like when encoded not in muscle, but in mind. They are apex predators not because of raw power, but because of information, shared, remembered, and carried through generations. The true strength of the orca lies not in its jaw, but in the female that leads it forward through the dark currents of change, navigating by memory, teaching by example, and surviving by culture. Beneath the shifting skin of the reef, in a water column veiled with sun-flecked sediment and drifting plankton, a shape moves. Not fast, not loud, but with such deceptive fluidity that it barely seems real. It is neither fish nor rock, nor plant nor predator, yet it is all of them at once. This is Sepia officinalis, the common cuttlefish, and there is nothing common about its neurological blueprint. Camouflaged against a fan coral bed that pulses with color and life, the cuttlefish waits. One eye swivels forward, tracking the hesitant flick of a shrimp's antennae. The other eye moves independently, scanning above for the silhouette of a grouper or barracuda. Each hemisphere of its brain, wired in elegant asymmetry, performs a different task, allowing the cuttlefish to split its attention in ways mammals cannot. What we see from the outside is just the shimmer, skin flashing in organized waves, chromatophores dilating and retracting like piano keys under invisible fingers. It's hypnotic, disarming even, and yet it's just the surface performance of a deeper intelligence. Beneath this skin is a brain-to-muscle system that operates with such precision that the cuttlefish can render itself visually indistinct from a chunk of coral within milliseconds. But this isn't camouflage in the conventional sense, it's active deception. The animal doesn't simply hide in the environment, it becomes it, using a network of over 20 million pigment cells that are wired directly into its nervous system. But while their skin is perhaps their most famous feature, it is their behavioral plasticity, their cognitive morphing, that offers the clearest window into the cuttlefish's evolutionary genius. These cephalopods exhibit a neurological trait rare among invertebrates: lateralized brain function. Unlike humans, where one hemisphere tends to dominate specific functions like language or logic, the cuttlefish can operate its brain hemispheres independently. This adaptation allows it to process entirely different types of stimuli at the same time, hunting prey with one visual field while remaining hyper-aware of predators in the other. This dual processing capability becomes even more important in the cluttered reef environment, where threats and opportunities arrive from all directions and often within seconds of each other. That split brain autonomy is not just for vigilance. It also plays a central role in one of the cuttlefish's strangest and most cunning behaviors: sexual deception. In dense aggregations where competition for females is intense, small male cuttlefish, those at a disadvantage when facing larger rivals, employ a tactic that, until recently, was only theorized in mammals: dual signaling. With one side of the body, the male mimics the patterns of a receptive female, effectively tricking nearby dominant males into ignoring him. Simultaneously, the other half of his body pulses with the classic zebra-stripe courtship pattern directed toward an actual female. This lateral display, a literal split identity, allows him to sneak in, mate quickly, and vanish without ever triggering aggression from his competitors. It's not brute strength that wins in this scenario, it's performance layered in neurological nuance. And while deception plays a large role in cuttlefish survival, so too does something more subtle: the ability to plan. In controlled laboratory conditions, cuttlefish have demonstrated something previously reserved for primates and corvids: delayed gratification. In one experiment, individuals were offered a choice: eat an immediate, lesser preferred food item, or wait for a more desirable reward. The cuttlefish not only waited, but did so in a manner that suggested situational memory and strategic inhibition. In multiple tests, they chose patience over impulsivity, adjusting their behavior based on prior trial outcomes. This was not instinct. It was learning, prediction, and restraint. This ability to inhibit responses is particularly rare among invertebrates, and it challenges long-held assumptions about the limits of non-vertebrate cognition. Most marine creatures operate on reactive loops, stimulus and response. But the cuttlefish breaks that mold. It perceives, evaluates, and decides, often in ways that suggest a mental model of its surroundings. In the open ocean, where everything is either food or a threat, such cognitive sophistication may be the only real defense for a soft-bodied animal with no claws, no teeth, and no armor. Even its eyes are built for complexity. Unlike vertebrate eyes, which use lenses to focus light, cuttlefish eyes employ W-shaped pupils and a retina with an inverted structure that increases contrast detection and depth perception. While they are technically colorblind, they possess such sensitive light-filtering mechanisms that they perceive contrast, polarization, and texture in ways we do not fully understand. It is likely that their entire reality is built not around color, but around the fine interplay of light and shadow, reflection and form. When you can shapeshift into a rock and detect polarized light bouncing off a sand grain, reality becomes less a picture and more a fluid field of advantages. Cuttlefish also exhibit remarkable motor control not only in their skin, but in their locomotion. Using a system of fin undulation and jet propulsion, they can hover like a drone, dart like a torpedo, or gently sidle into crevices with surgeon-like precision. This versatility allows them to access nearly any niche within a coral environment, from shadowed reef walls to open seagrass beds. Their feeding strategy mirrors this elegance. The two feeding tentacles remain retracted within the arms, coiled and hidden, until the precise moment a prey item is within range. Then, in less than 50 milliseconds, those tentacles shoot out, seize the prey with specialized suckers, and reel it back into the beak. It's a move so fast it often escapes even high-speed cameras, and it's guided by precise visual calculation and muscular timing. But for all their elegance, cuttlefish live brief, ephemeral lives. Most survive only 1 to 2 years. Their intelligence is not built for longevity, but for urgency. Every decision must count. Every encounter must balance risk and reward. Their reproductive window is narrow, and their ecological role, both predator and prey, demands a brain that learns fast and adapts faster. In many ways, the cuttlefish is the biological antithesis of the orca. It has no family structure, no social cohesion, no long lifespan to amass memories over decades. And yet, in its brief existence, it may solve more complex problems, deceive more rivals, and shift its very identity more completely than any other creature in the sea.
Intelligence, it seems, wears many masks, and the cuttlefish has mastered them all.
The shallows shimmer with life beneath a flat, glaring sun, as baitfish gather in dense, anxious clouds, each silver body a signal flare in the blue. From above, the sea seems calm, but below the surface, a campaign is already underway. In the cerulean expanse of a tropical bay, a pod of bottlenose dolphins maneuvers into a loose arc, silent and fluid, barely stirring the water. Their formation tightens, not by instinct but by intent. In these waters, the dolphin is not a playful acrobat. It is a tactician, an apex predator with a brain wired not only for solving problems, but for crafting them. With each flick of a fluke, each twist of its torpedo-like body, the dolphin makes decisions. And not just about where to feed or when to flee, but how to dominate, manipulate, and control. It is this depth of cognition, not strength or speed, that has elevated dolphins to the upper echelon of marine predators. Their strategies are not reactive, they are calculated. As the bait ball begins to swirl in confusion, the dolphins initiate one of their most complex weapons, the bubble net ambush. Several individuals descend beneath the school, releasing bursts of bubbles in tight upward spirals. The fish panic, fleeing from the rising curtain, only to be herded back by swift, flank-guarding dolphins that herd them with tail slaps and sonar pulses. In seconds, the bait ball is suspended in a near-perfect sphere, compressed by fear, boundaries enforced by sound, movement, and pressure. The dolphins have not only built a trap, they've shaped the battlefield. And then comes the strike. Not a chaotic lunge, but a rotating sequence of attacks. One dolphin charges through the ball, jaws agape, scattering the formation. Others follow in timed succession, each taking turns to feed. They do not compete. They coordinate. This level of cooperation is not casual. It relies on shared intention, memory of past hunts, and trust forged over years. It also reflects a chilling sense of hierarchy. Lower-ranking individuals sometimes get pushed to the periphery, waiting for leftovers unless they've earned favor. But even more unsettling than their teamwork is their capacity for recreational violence. Observations from both wild and captive environments reveal a darker side to dolphin cognition, one rooted not in survival, but in control. Dolphins have been documented repeatedly slapping injured or stunned fish with their tails, not killing them immediately, but prolonging the encounter. The fish is rendered unable to swim properly, kept alive and disoriented, as dolphins toy with it, tossing it between them. These aren't clumsy practice attempts. They are deliberate. The fish is already subdued. The slaps are excessive. Some theorists label this behavior as tactical sadism, a disturbing term, but one grounded in repeated evidence. In the context of dolphin society, it may serve multiple functions, reinforcing social dominance, practicing for future hunts, or even demonstrating power to rivals. Whether this behavior is rooted in emotion or evolutionary pressure remains debated, but its presence is undeniable. Bottlenose dolphins also weaponize sound with surgical precision. Their echolocation is more than a navigational tool. It is a means of control. By modulating frequency and volume, dolphins can detect the size, shape, density, and even the internal structure of prey and objects. But beyond detection lies influence. Some studies suggest that intense, focused sonar bursts may stun smaller prey, freezing them momentarily in the water column. Whether the mechanism is sensory overload or internal pressure disturbance, the result is the same: immobility, disorientation, and easy capture. In this way, dolphins exert neurological dominance before even touching their target. Social complexity drives much of this intelligence. Dolphin pods are not static units. They shift, dissolve, and reform, operating under what biologists call a fission-fusion society. Members move between pods fluidly, forming temporary alliances that resemble shifting political blocs. Within this system, favors are tracked. Individuals who assist in hunts, defend against threats, or share resources tend to receive reciprocal support later. Refusal to reciprocate can lead to isolation, or in some cases coordinated aggression. One of the more astonishing findings in recent years is evidence of interpod cooperation. Dolphins have been seen aiding unfamiliar groups in hunting or evading predators, only to later receive aid when their own pod is in need. This implies not just memory, but social accounting, an understanding of reputation and value exchange. In practical terms, this makes dolphins the only marine species, aside from orcas, known to maintain a kind of favor economy. In captivity, this behavior becomes even more visible. Dolphins have been observed devising systems of trade with humans and each other. In some facilities, dolphins learned that bringing objects to trainers like seaweed or trash earned fish. Over time, individuals began tearing objects into smaller pieces, trading each one separately to maximize reward. Others hoarded items in hidden locations and rationed them across the day. This is not mimicry, it is economic strategy. And yet, such intelligence does not come without cost. In environments altered by human interference, coastal developments, noise pollution, overfishing, dolphin societies show signs of stress fracture. Noise from ship engines disrupts sonar precision, leading to failed hunts. Over-harvested fish stocks force pods into less optimal territories, where competition is fiercer. And increasing plastic pollution has led to more frequent strandings and injuries. In some populations, calves fail to survive past infancy, a reflection not just of food scarcity, but of collapsed social support. The dolphin's survival, then, is not guaranteed by its intelligence. It is dependent on it. Every strategy, every alliance, every moment of restraint or aggression must be timed with precision in a world where threats evolve faster than instincts. The dolphin brain, large, convoluted, and neurologically dense, has become its most vital organ not just for dominance, but for adaptation. It is easy to romanticize dolphins as joyful performers, smiling assassins of the sea. But such a view dilutes their true nature. They are strategists, capable of compassion and cruelty, play and punishment, alliance and betrayal. They do not hunt because they must. They hunt well because they understand. The mind of a dolphin is not simply an engine of survival, It is a battlefield where tactics are shaped, power is tested, and intelligence is sharpened with every encounter. In the ocean's hierarchy of intellect, dolphins do not sit below humans. They simply evolved to understand a different set of rules. And in the blue arenas where sound replaces sight and silence hides the kill, they remain unmatched in the art of psychological warfare. In the dark crevices of volcanic rock and coral rubble, just past the reach of sunlight, a form slinks silently across the seabed. Its movement defies classification, neither swimming nor crawling, but an elegant flowing shift of color and texture, as if the sea itself has grown limbs. This is Octopus vulgaris, though there is nothing vulgar about it. It is a master of illusion, a shapeshifter, a puzzle box wrapped in arms. But unlike the creatures we commonly assign intelligence to, this one thinks with its body. The octopus is the closest thing the ocean has to a decentralized mind. While its central brain, encased not in a skull but in soft tissue behind the eyes, houses complex decision-making circuits, it is far from the whole story. Roughly 2/3 of the octopus's neurons reside not in its head, but along the nerve cords within its 8 arms. Each limb operates as a semi-autonomous processing unit. Touch, taste, movement, these are not merely relayed to the brain for interpretation, but are interpreted locally. The arm feels, decides, and reacts on its own terms, often without direct oversight from the brain. In biological terms, this is not delegation. It is distributed cognition. Imagine a human hand that can not only grip and flex, but independently investigate, learn, and remember sensations. Then imagine 8 of them. The octopus's arms explore not as simple appendages, but as curious entities, capable of solving problems, navigating mazes, and manipulating objects with a combination of tactile precision and chemical analysis. Lined with chemoreceptors and thousands of sensitive suckers, each arm can detect not only pressure and texture, but taste, sampling the environment in a way more akin to licking than touching. These arms often exhibit goal-directed behaviors even when severed. In experiments and unfortunate encounters with predators, detached limbs have been observed curling around prey, avoiding obstacles, and responding to tactile stimulation for several minutes post-detachment. Neurologically speaking, they remain alive, a fragmented but functioning extension of the animal's whole. But this neural decentralization does not mean the octopus lacks higher-order processing. Far from it. Its central brain remains one of the most complex among invertebrates, with large optic lobes dedicated to processing visual information, a vertical lobe system associated with learning and memory, and an impressive capacity for problem-solving and behavioral flexibility. What makes this organism unique is not just the presence of intelligence, but its architecture, a hybrid model where central and peripheral systems cooperate loosely, granting both rapid reflexive control and centralized learning. That flexibility manifests in some of the most compelling experiments in animal cognition. Recent studies have tested octopuses for a cognitive trait once believed limited to certain birds and mammals, episodic-like memory. In one such study, octopuses were presented with 2 types of food placed at different locations within a tank, each replenished at different time intervals. Over multiple trials, the animals demonstrated the ability to remember what kind of food was located where and when it would reappear, suggesting not just spatial memory but an understanding of temporal patterns. The implications are enormous. This behavior hints at a kind of mental time travel, the capacity to recall specific past events and apply that information to future planning. This is not conditioned behavior. This is learning grounded in memory and context. Such feats are even more remarkable considering the octopus's lifespan. Most species live only 1 to 2 years. Within that short window, they must grow from tiny hatchlings into problem-solving, hunting, camouflaging survival machines. Unlike orcas or dolphins, which benefit from extended parental care and social learning, the octopus is a solitary creature. It receives no guidance from its parents, no inherited tradition, no learned behaviors passed down. Its intelligence must emerge quickly, forged entirely from direct experience and intrinsic plasticity. Every trap escaped, every predator evaded, every crab extracted from its shell. These are lessons hard won in solitude. And the octopus learns fast. In captivity, they have been known to dismantle aquarium equipment, open jars to retrieve food, and even escape their enclosures through impossibly narrow gaps. They watch, they mimic, they test. Some individuals learn by observation, a trait rare among non-social animals. Others differentiate between human handlers, choosing to interact with some and avoid others. One particularly famous octopus was observed squirting jets of water at lights in its tank to short-circuit them, an act that implies not only recognition of cause and effect, but frustration. Yet the octopus's cognitive arsenal is not limited to manipulation. Camouflage, perhaps its most celebrated trick, is a marvel of neurological precision. Within milliseconds, the octopus can change not only its color, but its texture, pattern, and even light reflectivity. This is achieved through a complex network of chromatophores, pigment sacs, iridophores, which reflect light, and papillae, muscular structures that alter skin texture. What makes this even more impressive is that octopuses are colorblind. They perceive contrast and polarization, but not hues in the way we do. How they match their surroundings so perfectly remains partly a mystery, perhaps involving polarized light perception or a form of distributed visual processing through their skin. Some researchers speculate the skin may act as a primitive light sensor, enabling the octopus to see with its body, a sensory extension of its distributed mind. But the cost of this brilliance is a biological fragility. The octopus's intelligence comes without redundancy. It does not pass its knowledge on. It does not live long enough to build culture. Each generation starts from zero. Cut. All the problem solving, all the memory, all the behavioral complexity. It ends with the individual. Its offspring hatch alone, grow alone, and die alone. In evolutionary terms, it is a flickering intelligence, blooming briefly like a firework over the sea. And perhaps that is what makes the octopus so enigmatic. Its mind does not resemble ours, not in shape, not in function, not in inheritance. Yet it reaches similar conclusions. It plans, it experiments, it remembers, and it does so without language, without family, without longevity. The octopus is not intelligent because it needs to be. It is intelligent because evolution found a way to build memory into flesh, to decentralize thought, and to shape a brain that doesn't just think, but feels its way through the world in 8 directions at once. In the kelp forests of the North Pacific, where sunlight filters down through amber fronds and the water pulses with the slow sway of an underwater jungle, a small, furred figure floats belly up. Cradled in the crook of its arm is a rock, rounded, smooth, worn by time and use. For this sea otter, it is more than a simple stone. It is a possession, a tool, and perhaps most astonishingly, a tradition. While the vast majority of marine mammals rely on biological tools, speed, strength, stealth, the sea otter brings something else into its battles with the hard-shelled prey of the ocean, technology. Sea otters, Enhydra lutris, are the only marine mammals known to consistently use tools, and they are the only species known to carry them with intent. Tucked beneath each forelimb is a loose patch of skin, a natural storage pouch, one on each side of the chest cavity. These underarm pockets function as carrying cases, not only for food items but for favored rocks. And not just any rocks. Many otters display individual preferences, selecting specific stones with textures, weights, and sizes best suited to their diet. Some prefer flatter, palm-sized rocks for hammering open clams. Others choose heavier, more rounded ones for crushing sea urchins or prying abalones from rocks. These aren't momentary choices. In several long-term observational studies, individual otters have been recorded using the same rock repeatedly for years. These objects are not merely used, they are kept. The use of these tools is remarkably precise. An otter will often float supine, balancing a stone on its chest like a makeshift anvil. With dexterous forepaws, it positions the prey, be it a spiny urchin, a mussel cluster, or a thick-shelled clam, against the stone, then pounds it repeatedly with another rock until the shell cracks open. This is not a wild thrashing. It's a sequence of coordinated motions honed by trial and error involving leverage, angling, and force control. Otters have even been observed adjusting their grip depending on the type of prey, altering their techniques for different shell structures and spine configurations. In this way, their tool use is not static but situational, reflecting cognitive flexibility and an understanding of mechanical relationships. This degree of foresight and planning is especially impressive given the harsh realities of their environment. Unlike whales or seals, sea otters lack a thick layer of blubber to insulate them from cold water. Instead, They rely on the densest fur in the animal kingdom, up to 1 million hairs per square inch, to trap insulating air. Maintaining that fur requires relentless grooming, which consumes significant time and energy. Consequently, every feeding session must be efficient. Otters need to consume approximately 25 to 30% of their body weight in food daily, just to maintain core temperature. The use of tools to access high-calorie prey like sea urchins and crabs becomes not just convenient, but essential for survival. But perhaps the most telling expression of their cognitive potential lies in how they teach. Sea otters are not born with tool use abilities, they learn them. And they learn them socially. Mothers have been documented repeatedly demonstrating tool use to their pups, placing stones on their bellies, cracking open food items in front of them, and guiding their paws through the motions. These are not instinctual displays, but active teaching. In playful interactions, pups mimic the actions of adults, slapping shells against their chests, inspecting rocks, and experimenting with manipulation. This process of observational learning and imitation bears a striking resemblance to early tool use development in primates, and may represent one of the clearest examples of proto-culture in a marine species. Tool use is not uniform across all sea otter populations. In areas like Central California and Southern Alaska, where prey diversity is high and environmental pressures are intense, tool use is nearly ubiquitous. But in other regions, particularly those with softer-shelled prey or fewer intertidal zones, tool use is rare or absent. This geographical variation suggests that tool use is not genetically fixed, but culturally transmitted, retained in populations where it is useful and taught across generations. Otters in this light do not merely adapt biologically, they adapt behaviorally, passing survival strategies through learning, not just lineage. There is even emerging evidence of lateralization, handedness, in otters. Some individuals favor the left or right paw when manipulating tools or prey, indicating hemisphere-dominant brain function similar to that seen in humans and certain birds. While the ecological implications of this lateralization are still under investigation, it adds yet another layer to the sea otter's cognitive profile. Specialized brain function, motor control, and tool manipulation all working in tandem. Beyond the individual, sea otters wield a profound ecological impact through their feeding habits. As keystone predators, their preference for sea urchins prevents urchin populations from overgrazing kelp forests. In ecosystems where otters have been extirpated, kelp forests collapse into urchin barrens, biodiversity deserts dominated by spiny grazers. Where otters return, the forests rebound. In this way, the otter's rock becomes more than a tool. It becomes an ecological lever, restoring balance to entire habitats. Through intelligence and behavior, these animals restructure not only their immediate surroundings, but the very foundation of the food web. But as with all intelligence, there is fragility. Sea otters remain vulnerable to oil spills, disease outbreaks, and climate-driven disruptions. Their dense fur, so vital to their thermal regulation, becomes a liability in the presence of pollutants. A single slick of oil can collapse the insulating air layer and send a healthy otter into hypothermic shock. Their dependence on intertidal prey also places them in direct competition with human fisheries and exposes them to entanglement and bycatch. And as prey resources decline or shift due to warming waters, otters may need to rely more heavily on their problem-solving abilities and on their capacity to pass those lessons to the next generation. In the cold shallows where kelp sways and mollusks cling to stone, the sea otter floats, tool in paw, prey in sight, pup by its side. It is not just feeding. It is crafting a moment of intergenerational knowledge. The rock it carries may be 10 years old, smoothed by 1,000 strikes, handed down in spirit if not in flesh. And as that pup mimics the movement, slapping an empty shell against its chest, something remarkable unfolds beneath the surface. Memory, strategy, and inheritance. Not through genes, but through behavior. In a world that often rewards instinct over thought, the sea otter endures by doing what few marine animals can, by keeping tools and passing down how to use them. In the shallow tropical waters of northern Australia, where mangrove roots twist like arthritic fingers into the surf and the tide rolls heavy with silt and life, a shape drifts almost invisibly just beneath the surface. It is barely there, transparent, soft, a shimmering cube the size of a human fist trailing long, hair-thin tentacles. There are no muscles to ripple or fins to guide it, no teeth, no bones. Yet as it moves, it does not simply float with the current. It swerves intentionally around a root, avoids a rock, and adjusts its course toward the light. This is Chironex fleckeri, the box jellyfish, one of the ocean's most efficient killers. And it does all of this with no central brain. What separates the box jellyfish from its gelatinous cousins is not only its lethality, though its venom can stop a human heart in under 5 minutes, but its unsettling sense of spatial awareness. While most jellyfish drift passively, responding to stimuli only after contact, box jellyfish are actively aware of their surroundings. They are not sophisticated thinkers in the traditional sense, but they are not mindless either. They are distributed intelligences, organisms that process information without a central command center. And nowhere is this more apparent than in their vision. The body of the box jellyfish is crowned with a structure known as a rhopalia, actually 4 of them, positioned equidistantly around the bell. Each rhopalium is a cluster of sensors, housing 6 distinct eyes, giving the animal a total of 24. Unlike the simple light-sensitive pits seen in most invertebrates, these are true eyes. They have corneas, they have lenses, they have retinas. 2 of the 6 in each cluster are remarkably similar in structure to those of vertebrates, capable of forming focused images. But perhaps the most bizarre aspect of this visual system is that the eyes point in all directions, up, down, sideways, even inward toward the bell. In essence, the box jellyfish sees the world as a 360-degree sphere of gradients and shapes, navigated not by thought, but by geometry. And still, there is no brain. No cerebrum interpreting these visual signals, no spinal cord relaying action. Instead, the processing occurs locally, within the rhopalia themselves and the surrounding nerve ring, a thin band of neural tissue that encircles the bell's margin. This ring doesn't control the body in a hierarchical way. It coordinates. Sensory information from each rhopalium is interpreted in parallel, and movement is generated through chemical gradients and decentralized motor pulses. The result is motion that appears purposeful, even calculated, without the presence of a centralized thinking organ. Experiments conducted in controlled marine labs have revealed that box jellyfish can learn from their environment, even within this decentralized framework. In a series of studies, individuals were placed into specially designed tanks with visual obstacles, vertical stripes, artificial mangrove roots, and varying light sources. After several encounters, the jellyfish began to alter their swimming patterns, avoiding previously collided objects and adjusting their paths to follow light gradients that led to open water. What's astonishing is that these changes persisted even after extended rest periods, implying a kind of short-term environmental memory. This memory isn't housed in a brain, it's embedded in circuits. Its action encoded in pathways of decentralized feedback. Why does a jellyfish need this level of awareness? In part, it's an adaptation to its highly active lifestyle. Unlike other cnidarians, box jellyfish are fast swimmers. They pulsate their bells with enough strength to navigate through reef shallows, mangrove edges and estuaries, environments filled with tight corners, shifting currents and debris. Being able to perceive and navigate obstacles is not a luxury. It is a requirement for survival. But it is also a necessity for hunting. Box jellyfish feed on small fish and crustaceans, prey that can dart, hide and flee. With long, highly sensitive tentacles laced with nematocysts, microscopic venomous harpoons, they trail a nearly invisible curtain behind their moving bell. But this net is not aimlessly cast. When a tentacle contacts a fish, chemical and mechanical sensors trigger nematocyst firing. Simultaneously, the tentacle contracts, coiling rapidly to bring the prey closer to the bell, where digestion begins. During high prey density, box jellyfish have been observed modulating tentacle deployment patterns, spreading them out more fully, contracting them more rapidly, or focusing them in the direction of strongest sensory input. These changes suggest real-time decision-making, reflexive, yes, but flexible and situational. Even the jellyfish's sense of up and down is governed by vision. Those downward-facing eyes allow the animal to gauge depth and orientation by comparing visual cues to gravity-based balance organs within the rhopalia. In turbid coastal environments where light refracts unevenly, this comparative mechanism gives the box jellyfish extraordinary balance, allowing it to maintain a vertical orientation while swimming with intent toward the photic zones or evading shadowed shallows. Some researchers now argue that the box jellyfish possesses a primitive form of consciousness, not sentience, but a baseline sensory integration that allows for a cohesive representation of its body in space. It is not conscious of what it is doing, but it is aware of where it is doing it. In biological terms, this is remarkable. The box jellyfish redefines our understanding of intelligence by uncoupling cognition from centralization. It is thinking without thinking in one place. And yet, for all its neural simplicity, this animal's sting delivers one of the most potent neurotoxins found in nature. The venom targets cardiac and nervous tissue, causing excruciating pain, paralysis, and in some cases, cardiac arrest. This lethality has led to extensive research into its molecular biology, but it's the structure of its mind, or lack thereof, that may prove even more revolutionary. Engineers and roboticists have begun to study the box jellyfish's decentralized control system as a model for autonomous underwater drones, machines that do not rely on centralized processing, but adapt in real time to obstacles and changing terrain through distributed sensors and feedback loops. In a world where intelligence is often anthropomorphized, measured in language, planning, or problem solving, the box jellyfish is a stark reminder that survival does not require thought as we know it. It requires input, response, and pattern. And this ancient organism, with its transparent body and silent glide, accomplishes this through a neural algorithm evolved over 500 million years. It is an animal that perceives with no brain, that acts with no thought, and yet navigates its dangerous debris-filled world with a precision that challenges our very definition of cognition. In the quiet waters of the reef shallows, as currents push sediment through tunnels of light, the box jellyfish continues its drift. Not passive, not driven, but navigating. 24 eyes, no voice, no face, and yet it sees. The Antarctic wind is not a gust. It is an elemental force, a hammer of cold that strips heat from anything exposed. On the sea ice, nothing moves quickly. The sky is gunmetal, the horizon a blur of snow and ice, as if the land itself were exhaling frost. But at the edge of this frozen expanse, a congregation forms, tight, rigid, yet pulsing with quiet life. Thousands of emperor penguins stand pressed together, backs to the wind, their forms shifting only slightly as they take part in one of the most intricate thermal strategies in the animal kingdom, the huddle. At first glance, it seems a chaotic mass of feathers and motionless heads. But viewed from above, the pattern is alive. Individuals cycle from the outer rim to the warmer center and back out again in a slow, synchronized dance. This rotation is not coordinated by any leader, nor dictated by dominant individuals. It is a decentralized solution to a problem that kills without prejudice: heat loss. In temperatures that drop below 50 degrees Celsius with winds nearing hurricane force, exposed flesh can freeze within minutes. For chicks and adults alike, survival depends not on solitude or selfishness, but on cooperation. And the fairness of this thermal economy, where each bird receives time in the core, emerges not from planning, but from instinctual pattern recognition and spatial logic embedded deep in their biology. But the huddle is only part of the strategy. Survival for emperor penguins and their various cousins throughout the southern hemisphere demands efficiency on every front: movement, heat, memory, and even emotion. Nowhere is this more evident than in their underwater foraging. Despite the clumsy shuffle on land, penguins transform into streamlined torpedoes the moment they break the surface. Beneath the ice, their bodies move with balletic precision, flippers driving them through sub-zero water with minimal drag. Their feathers are densely packed and overlapped in layers that trap air, reducing both heat loss and friction. This air layer also acts as a secondary propulsion tool. As they ascend rapidly from depth, penguins can release this trapped air in microbubbles, decreasing water resistance and giving them bursts of acceleration. An adaptation not only for efficiency, but also for predator evasion. What's more astonishing than the mechanics of their dive is the precision of their destination. Emperor penguins can travel dozens of kilometers through featureless underwater landscapes to find specific patches of rich feeding grounds, dense shoals of krill, fish, and squid, then return days later to the same location, often with remarkable consistency. The terrain beneath the Southern Ocean is not marked by obvious cues, and yet these birds navigate with accuracy that rivals GPS. They likely combine a suite of environmental markers, geomagnetic fields, celestial cues, and even subtle differences in water chemistry or temperature. This is not wandering, It is targeted foraging, informed by memory, refined by experience. Penguins, particularly emperors, must weigh every decision in terms of energy cost. When males incubate eggs through the long, sunless Antarctic winter, they do so without feeding for up to 120 days. They stand in place, balancing their single precious egg on their feet beneath a fold of skin called the brood pouch. In these conditions, any unnecessary motion, any exposure to wind, is a drain on the limited energy reserves they must preserve until the female returns. The timing of that return is not random, it is calculated. Females feed at sea for weeks before making the return journey inland, guided by the memory of ice corridors, colony scent trails, and subtle auditory cues. Reunions in the chaotic sea of identical black and white bodies are achieved not through sight, but through sound. Each penguin has a unique vocal signature, and mates recognize one another by call alone, a necessity in a world where vision is hampered by wind and monochrome terrain. But not all penguin behavior is driven solely by efficiency. In the strange space where biology meets emotion, we find glimpses of something subtler: deception. Field researchers have documented instances of female emperor penguins feigning injury or distress to avoid the aggressive advances of persistent males. Limping, dragging wings, or even low, plaintive calls can cause a suitor to pause long enough for the female to slip away unnoticed. While the frequency of this behavior is still debated, its implications are profound. It suggests not just reflexive fear, but an understanding of another's expectations, and the ability to manipulate those expectations to her own benefit. In evolutionary terms, this is called tactical deception, a cognitive step rarely observed outside primates, corvids, and cetaceans. Such nuance challenges our assumptions about penguin behavior. These animals are often framed as comic relief, waddling caricatures of devotion. But beneath the anthropomorphism lies a mind wired for environmental calculation. Even chick feeding reveals subtle complexity. Parents recognize not just their own young, but the begging calls associated with different levels of hunger. They can adjust meal size and frequency accordingly, favoring their own genetic offspring while still participating in communal creche systems that afford protection and warmth to all. This dual system, individual recognition and group strategy, reflects an intelligence rooted not in tool use or long-term planning, but in the fine calibration of social and ecological signals. And that calibration is constantly tested. Climate change is rapidly reshaping penguin habitat, particularly for species like the emperor that depend on stable sea ice platforms for breeding. As the ice forms later and breaks up earlier, breeding seasons are compressed and feeding distances increase. Chicks are sometimes abandoned not out of cruelty, but out of mathematical necessity. Parents cannot afford the energy loss of repeated failed foraging trips. In this shifting world, the penguin's cognitive map, its memory of productive feeding grounds, nesting paths, and seasonal rhythms, is under pressure to evolve faster than the ice is melting. Yet they persist. Not because they are invincible, but because their intelligence is subtle, situational, and deeply ecological. Penguins do not strategize in the way we do, but their behaviors reflect the same underlying principles: conserve energy, reduce exposure, maximize yield, protect the vulnerable. They are strategic in a way that serves the colony, the lineage, the moment. And so, in the midst of white silence and biting wind, as they huddle in seamless formation or launch like missiles beneath the ice sheet, the penguins endure, not through brute strength or technological mastery, but through logic born of necessity. Each step on the ice, each dive in the sea, each shuffle in the huddle is an act of survival honed by generations. Their intelligence is not loud. It does not seek to dominate, but in the frozen margins of the planet, it is the only thing keeping them alive. In the warm, sun-drenched currents of a mid-ocean atoll, where the water moves in a rhythm as ancient as the tides themselves, a shadow breaks the surface tension and glides into view. Wings spanning 7 meters from tip to tip move in deliberate strokes, part bird, part ghost, part machine. The manta ray, Mobula birostris, glides not as a predator nor as a prey animal on the run. It drifts with composure, with spatial command. In a realm where brute force often defines the food chain, the manta is something else entirely. It is a presence, silent, large, and calm, and behind its gentle nature lies a mind as enigmatic as the open sea it calls home. Despite their size and spectacle, manta rays are rarely aggressive, rarely confrontational, and almost never clumsy. They navigate the ocean not by reacting to it, but by calculating it. Their movements are premeditated, adjusted with nuance, and coordinated in a way that suggests not just instinctual control, but awareness of space, of others, and most remarkably, of self. In a series of groundbreaking studies, manta rays have demonstrated behaviors suggesting they may possess a level of self-recognition, a trait once thought to be the province of only a few social mammals and birds. When exposed to mirrors in controlled settings, individual rays did not respond with confusion or territorial aggression, as most animals do. Instead, they performed repeated deliberate actions in front of the reflection, turning, looping, observing the mirrored body in angles they couldn't achieve otherwise. Some even blew bubbles near the mirror, as if testing interaction. This behavior aligns with what cognitive scientists call the mirror test, a rough benchmark for self-awareness. While imperfect, the test has only ever been passed by humans, great apes, dolphins, elephants, and certain corvids like magpies. That a fish, an elasmobranch no less, could enter that club has forced a re-examination of what we define as consciousness in non-mammalian species. It also forces us to reconsider what mental machinery lies behind those dark, disc-shaped eyes. Part of the answer may lie in the anatomy of the manta's brain itself. Relative to body size, manta rays have the largest brain of any fish. Unlike the compressed neural structures seen in most fish species, the manta's brain is not only proportionally larger, but also structurally distinct. Most striking is the development of the cerebellum, the brain's coordination center, which in manta rays is significantly expanded. In humans and other mammals, this region governs fine motor control, spatial awareness, and balance, but it's also implicated in emotional regulation and social cognition. For a creature that roams open pelagic zones, frequently traverses coral labyrinths, and visits cleaning stations with regularity, this expansion may be the neural equivalent of an upgrade in behavioral complexity. And that behavioral complexity is on full display in the social dynamics of the manta ray cleaning station. These underwater oases, typically coral heads, bommies, or reef ridges, are more than spas. They are sites of ritualized interaction. When mantas approach, they do not barge in or chase others out. They queue, they hover, they wait for cleaner fish, mostly wrasses and gobies, to begin the process of parasite removal. Multiple individuals may hover side by side, wings rippling but position held, sometimes for several minutes, while others finish their turn. There is little competition, no violence, no hierarchy apparent. It is as if a silent code governs the session. Among marine animals, such patience and tolerance are rare, especially in fish. The manta ray behaves here more like an elephant at a watering hole than a predator patrolling a reef. This communal etiquette may serve not only hygiene, but also social bonding. Individuals are known to return to the same cleaning stations seasonally. They arrive from hundreds of kilometers away with remarkable timing and route fidelity. Many researchers believe this navigational accuracy is tied to the same neural structures responsible for spatial mapping in birds and mammals. The combination of long-distance migration, sight memory, and social tolerance hints at a brain wired for more than survival. It suggests planning, recognition, and perhaps even attachment. Intriguingly, manta rays also display a form of curiosity that is more typical of mammals than fish. In the wild, they will approach divers without aggression, circling slowly, often matching eye contact and even mimicking diver movement. They have been known to hover near boats, investigate floating objects, and in some cases, exhibit what can only be described as play, looping around driftwood, diving through bubble rings, or pirouetting in slow motion. This behavior is not constant, nor is it well understood, but it appears to emerge in low-threat environments where food and space are abundant. In those moments, the manta ray isn't responding to stimulus. It seems to be exploring. Evolution did not shape the manta ray for predation. Its mouth is large, but it filters plankton and small organisms using gill rakers, not teeth. Its size protects it from all but the most determined orcas and large sharks. Its defense is not attack, but scale and speed, and above all, grace. Mantas can accelerate rapidly when startled, but they rarely flee. Their large eyes process more light than ours, adapted to twilight zones in the water column, where they feed in slow, spiraling loops through dense aggregations of krill. These spirals are not random. They're geometrically consistent, often traced in patterns that suggest efficiency maximized per calorie burned. Yet even with this built-in grace, manta rays are increasingly vulnerable to human activity. Their gill plates are highly sought in illegal markets, falsely believed to possess medicinal properties. Overfishing, pollution, and climate-driven shifts in plankton density threaten their migratory patterns. Despite their intelligence, they are ill-equipped to handle nets and hooks. And unlike fast-breeding fish species, mantas are slow to mature and slow to reproduce. A female may produce only one pup every 2 to 5 years, after a gestation period of over a year, rates more akin to elephants than tuna. In this context, the manta's mind is not just a marvel, it's a liability. Intelligence in the ocean often requires time to learn, to grow, to pass on knowledge socially or genetically. But time is what they may not have, and yet they return, each season, each year, riding currents they've memorized, visiting stations they trust, approaching humans not with fear but caution and curiosity. In the wide, open blue, where few structures guide and fewer creatures linger, the manta ray is a gliding contradiction. It is large but gentle, fish but thoughtful, primitive but possibly self-aware. It does not build, it does not speak, but it understands perhaps in ways we are only just beginning to measure. Its intelligence is fluid, unspoken, and as vast as the open water it commands, proof that evolution can shape awareness not only in those who walk the land, but in those who dance through the sea. In the fractured architecture of the reef, where coral fingers extend like shattered stone columns and daylight fractures into kaleidoscopic beams, there exists a predator that does not chase, does not sprint, and does not rely on open combat. It waits, half its body coiled in shadow, the other half swaying slightly with the water's pull. Its snake-like head protrudes from a dark crevice. The Moray eel is not built for speed or grace, but for geometry, or it does not dominate its domain through muscle, but through mathematics, angles, pressure points, and positional advantage. Every coral crack is a doorway, every hollow a trap. What looks like patient lurking is, in fact, calculation. The Moray's advantage begins with its body, long, flexible, muscular, and capable of reversing direction inside a tunnel. Unlike most predatory fish, Morays do not need to turn around to strike or retreat. They are structurally adapted for confinement, evolved to occupy three-dimensional mazes of rock and coral where larger predators cannot follow. Their scaleless skin, covered in thick mucus, not only reduces friction as they glide through crevices, but also contains antimicrobial properties, an adaptation likely shaped by the constant abrasion of life inside sharp, abrasive labyrinths. But even more remarkable than the body is the mouth, or rather the mouths. Moray eels are among the only fish equipped with a second set of jaws, known as pharyngeal jaws. Unlike the secondary chewing mechanisms of many vertebrates, these jaws are not fixed in the throat. They move. When a moray bites, the outer jaws seize the prey. Then, from deep within the throat, the pharyngeal jaws lunge forward, gripping the struggling prey and dragging it inward. This is not a subtle motion. It is rapid, forceful, and horrifyingly precise. The inspiration for cinematic monsters like Alien was no exaggeration. These jaws provide not just redundancy, but essential utility. The moray cannot use suction feeding like most reef fish due to its narrow skull and elongated snout. Instead, it must physically pull food into its throat. The dual jaw system solves that evolutionary problem. Efficient, brutal, and surprisingly elegant. Yet the moray's hunting brilliance extends beyond anatomy. What sets it apart is its use of space. Moray eels do not chase prey across the reef. They herd it, redirect it, pressure it into corners. A typical strike begins with the eel emerging slowly from a crevice to flush a fish or crustacean from hiding. Then, in a moment of deceptive speed, it darts toward the prey, not to catch it in open water, but to guide it into another hollow, a tighter space, an inescapable tunnel. The prey, in its panic, enters the eel's domain, and once inside, the eel blocks the exit with its body, turning the labyrinth into a killing chamber. It strikes not from behind, but from the side, from above, even from the tunnel's ceiling, its jaw and neck structure allowing it to pivot and launch in nearly any direction within a confined radius. This is not instinctive chaos, it is positional control. A chess game played in coral, with checkmate measured in milliseconds. And morays are not always alone in this game. One of the most extraordinary and rare behaviors observed in reef ecosystems is interspecies cooperative hunting. In certain regions, particularly the Red Sea and parts of the Indo-Pacific, Moray eels have been recorded forming temporary hunting partnerships with groupers, large predatory fish known for their brute strength and forward-charging attacks. The grouper, unable to reach prey in narrow crevices, seeks out the moray and performs a visual signal, head-shaking or rapid swimming circles near the eel's hiding place. In response, the moray emerges, and the two begin a coordinated patrol. This partnership is more than opportunism. It is strategy.
The grouper flushes prey into crevices. The moray flushes prey into open water. Each one benefits from the other's blind spots,
and more astonishingly, they appear to choose when and where to collaborate. If the moray is uninterested or full, it will ignore the signal. If the hunt is productive, the two may return to the same grounds again and again. In some cases, morays have even been observed swimming out of their holes to initiate the hunt, approaching groupers directly. This level of coordination suggests not only recognition between species, but a working memory of past success. Among fish, this is vanishingly rare. Even within their own species, morays exhibit territorial and spatial intelligence. Dominant individuals will claim a complex of tunnels, using side chambers to store food or retreat when threatened. Their awareness of the reef's topography appears finely tuned. In baited trials, they navigate directly to food even after long periods, implying a spatial map encoded in memory, not merely chemical trail following. Morays have also been observed caching food in corners of their dens, wedging large prey like octopuses or crustaceans into rock fissures, returning hours later to feed again. This behavior, while still being studied, suggests future planning, or at least delayed consumption, a concept once thought limited to birds and mammals. Still, the moray's strengths come at a cost. Its limited eyesight forces it to rely heavily on chemoreception, its sense of smell and taste, delivered via specialized cells in the nasal cavity and tongue. This makes it vulnerable to changes in water chemistry. Pollution, rising acidity, and sedimentation can all mask or alter scent trails, confusing hunting behavior. Likewise, its dependence on coral structure for ambush and concealment renders it especially susceptible to reef degradation. As coral bleaching strips reefs of their complexity, the moray's hunting grounds collapse into flat, open plains where its advantages vanish. And yet, for now, it persists. One of the reef's most efficient ambush predators, surviving not through overwhelming speed or brute force, but through patience, pressure, and placement. Its dual jaws are just one part of a larger equation, an animal that uses the reef not as a backdrop, but as a weapon, turning terrain into trap and corner into cage. Each lunge is calculated. Each crevice is a possibility. In a world of flashier predators, the moray wins by outpositioning rather than outchasing. Here, among the coral ruins and fish traffic highways, the moray eel remains a master of three-dimensional warfare. It does not command the reef with noise or spectacle, but with geometry, strategy, and silent, patient precision.
It is not the monster we imagine, but it is something far more dangerous, the mind behind the ambush.
Beneath the blue veneer of the ocean, far from the comforts of land and language, intelligence does not always wear the forms we recognize. There are no classrooms here, no vocal symbols or social contracts as we define them. But there is thought. There is choice. There is memory and strategy, calculated deception and emotional nuance. Across the reefs, the pelagic corridors, and the icy margins of the sea, intelligence reveals itself not as a single structure or static trait, but as a spectrum of behaviors, fluid, adaptable, and often astonishingly advanced. In the wild sea, cognition emerges in shapes both alien and familiar. The octopus, for example, is a creature with no bones, no family, and no cultural inheritance. And yet it learns at a blistering pace. Its brain, decentralized and scattered throughout its arms, allows each limb to act semi-independently, to probe, taste, remember, and even solve puzzles without direct instruction from the central ganglia. This distributed intelligence grants it remarkable adaptability. It doesn't just react, it simulates, it plans. In contrast, the orca moves with centralized precision. Its massive brain, especially the neocortex and limbic system, supports complex communication, intergenerational learning, and even rituals of grief. Orcas do not just remember, they teach. They do not simply hunt, they strategize together, bonded by matrilineal wisdom and encoded dialects passed down like tribal languages. Both animals are intelligent, but in entirely opposite directions. One mind spread through flesh, the other held in a powerful core shaped by social lineage. Where the octopus masters solitude, others engage in self-reflection. Manta rays, ancient filter feeders of the open blue, may possess a level of self-awareness once thought exclusive to primates and a few avian outliers. When tested with mirrors, they behave in ways that suggest recognition of the self, looping, posing, even investigating markings on their own reflections. This is not mimicry. This is introspection. By contrast, the cuttlefish has honed mimicry itself into an art form. It can split its body into two visual messages, deceiving a rival on one side while courting a mate on the other. Its camouflage is not reactive but predictive, shaped in milliseconds by memory and context. It does not know itself in a mirror, perhaps, but it knows how to shape what others see. One reflects inward, the other outward, but both reveal minds built for adaptation, illusion, and survival. And then there is the boundary between tool use and tactical environment manipulation. The sea otter, floating serenely on the surface, wields its favorite stone like a relic. Passed from armpit pouch to paw, these stones are kept and reused for years. Sea otters choose their tools, refine their use, and even appear to teach their offspring through mimicry and demonstration. It is proto-culture, a rare trait in marine life. Yet deeper within the reef, the Moray eel plays a different game. It has no tools, no culture, and yet it exhibits astonishing tactical planning. It uses the very structure of the reef as an extension of its strategy, herding prey into corners, blocking exits, and striking with precision in the shadows. It even forms strategic alliances with groupers, hunting cooperatively in a way that suggests memory and reward recognition. One uses an object. The other is the object, weaponizing space and positioning to win. Intelligence in both cases is not about the tools, but the intention behind their use. And throughout this web of cognition, the most surprising commonality is not the size of the brain or the complexity of its folds. It is the flexibility of behavior. The dolphins who trap fish with sonic nets, only to then share their technique with others, form complex social economies based on favors and expected reciprocation. The penguins who rotate within thermal huddles in complete fairness, without conflict or instruction, display emergent cooperation that resembles governance more than instinct. The box jellyfish, entirely devoid of a centralized brain, somehow navigates three-dimensional spaces with visual precision, responding to obstacles and light gradients through a ring of decentralized neural tissue. What links them all is not a single evolutionary path or neurological blueprint. It is adaptation, response, precision. This chapter of the ocean tells us something humbling about ourselves. That cognition is not limited to neocortices or opposable thumbs. That language and technology are not the sole marks of higher thought. In fact, the ocean has been crafting intelligence long before mammals ever walked the earth, and it did so in forms that challenge our very definitions. Here, the line between instinct and intellect blurs. Sea creatures lie, manipulate, help, and cooperate, not for morality but for efficiency, and in doing so, they blur the binary of simple versus complex minds. They teach us that intelligence is not measured in IQ points or symbolic reasoning, but in survival informed by strategy. In the ability to pause, to deceive, to wait, to act when the moment is right, not just with speed, but with intent. From the gentle calculations of manta rays to the silent ambushes of Moray eels, from the underwater map makers of penguin colonies to the body-thinking arms of the octopus, the ocean reveals a truth that transcends species and taxonomy. Being smart in the sea means knowing when not to move, when not to strike, when to cooperate, when to hide, when to mislead. Survival here is not about power, it's about understanding. Understanding the environment, the other, and sometimes the self. These are not brutes. These are not machines. These are masterminds, shaped by pressure, tuned by evolution, and still, in many ways, smarter than we dare to imagine. In the end, the ocean's most brilliant minds are not defined by how loudly they speak, but by how wisely they listen.